And now we'll move on with SE 710, that is comparative information and corresponding figures and comparative financial information. And this time we are not going to see directly the objectives of the auditor, we'll watch a video. This is our keyword kit series. This is a video of keywords kit series. You see corresponding figures were numbers from same time period for the last year, that is comparing 2 years, it's corresponding figures. Okay, like they have sales a comparison with in a toy store from 2020 to 2021. Okay, and with regards to the comparative figures, what they have said is that it is similar time period but not the same time period. Similar time period means what? Like with regards to the seasons, like they're comparing the sales with regards to the summer season and the winter season. That is what they're comparing. They're comparing two different seasons corresponding were same element, like 2 years. They're comparing 2 years or with the last year, etc. And here they were comparing 2 quarters, or say they were comparing the summer and the winter. Comparing is comparing similar things. What do? We compare similar things. Okay, and that's what the difference between the corresponding and comparative. Comparative were two different time periods which were similar in nature, but not this from the last year, etc. For the last year, it is corresponding. And with that said, we'll just see now the objectives of the auditor. The objectives of the auditor is to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence whether the comparative information included in the financial statements. Comparative means summer, winter, okay, in all material respects in accordance with the requirements of comparative information in the AFRF, and to report in accordance with the auditor's reporting responsibilities. Okay, this is with regards to the objectives of the auditor. These were the definitions. All the three things were there, right? First, comparative information is the amounts or the disclosures included in the financial statement in respect of one or more prior periods as per AFRF. It's a simple definition which we do not usually get remembered with that. Corresponding figures were those comparing with last year. Okay, comparative information where amounts or disclosures for a prior period that are included as an integral part of the current period of financial statements and are intended to be read only in relation to the amounts and other disclosures in relating to the current period. You see, it's a comparison between the current period and the prior period. The level of detail presented in the corresponding amounts are dictated primarily with the relevance of the current period figures and all. This is just definition for you to understand, but mostly we have to write not the definitions usually. And comparative financial statements were comparative information where amounts or disclosures for the prior periods are included for comparison with financial statements of the current period, and the level of information that was, it was all the same with regards to this. Okay, usually in any kind of financial statements, what do we have? This is an audit report. What they're doing is they're comparing balance as of March 31st and March 2020. That is, they're comparing the previous prior period items, right? This is what they have set as a corresponding figures. These were corresponding figures. But when you see the annual report of Tata Motors again with regards to, wait, yeah, this is the annual report with they have compared the remuneration of one managing director, that is for the April 2021 to the June 30th, and they have compared with the managerial remuneration from July 2021 to March 2022. That is of the similar kind of time periods. This is what the comparative data they call it as. Yes, this is how they use the corresponding and the comparative figures. And with that said, we'll just move on with SS17 here. What the audit procedure? First, you have to assess the consistency of the accounting policies and check comparative figures. Comparative figures is that remuneration with that the amount and disclosures in the prior period, and determine that the financial statement contain appropriately classified the comparative information and evaluate the impact on the financial statements and obtain written representations. You see what the auditor has to do. He has to check the accounting policies, and he has to check whether the amount and the disclosures check the comparative figures in the prior period, and you have to check whether they have been properly classified or not, and you have to check the impact on the financial statements and and the written representation thereof. And if the audit report of the earlier year is qualified, what you have to do, because corresponding, because something we have to compare it with the prior period, and most usually, even not every time, but sometimes the comparative figures also has to be compared, right, with the prior period items. When auditors report in the prior period is qualified or adverse, or a disclaimer of opinion has given, you have to check whether that item was resolved or accounted or disclosed as per FRF, and need not refer the previous modification if they have resolved or accounted or disclosed that. If they have rectified the prior period mistake, the auditor need not or refer to the previous modification. If unresolved, then what he has to do? He has to refer current period figures and corresponding figures. Corresponding is prior period figures, and those affect, how do they affect the financial statements of the current period, and in any other case, explain the opinion modified because of the effects of the unresolved matters. Okay. And with regards to the audit report, with respect to the corresponding figures, the auditor opinion should refer in his opinion only when, if previous year auditor's report is other than unqualified, that is, it has qualified, and prior period statements were not addressed, if prior period financial statements were unaudited. Then what? If all the three happens, if any of the three happens, what he has to do? He also have to give opinion even on the corresponding figures. Usually, if prior period items were audited, he need not give with regards to the corresponding figures. Corresponding figures are prior period figures. And if at all they were qualified, audited and qualified, if they were resolved and accounted, he need not specify that modification. If they were unresolved, what he has to do? He has to refer how it would impact the current year financial statements, and effect of the modification and all. And in his audit report, what he has to do with respect to the corresponding figures, he also have to form an opinion, because the prior period items were not audited, or prior period misstatements were not addressed, and prior period audit report was qualified. Yes, it is not a clean report. Then he has to form an opinion on that. And with respect to the comparative figures, the auditor opinion should refer in his opinion only when the auditor's opinion shall refer to each period for which financial statements are presented, on which audit opinion is expressed, and the difference in the opinion on the previously issued financial statements, and if previous year financial statement audited by some other auditor, and if prior period financial statements were unaudited. Same thing that was repeated here. You see, when financial statements were unaudited, yes, unaudited, and if the previous financial statements were audited by some other auditor, some other auditor, both this come hand in hand, and the difference in opinion, and also the auditor's opinion shall refer to each period for which financial statement, that is, he has different opinions with regards to that. So these two go hand in hand, A and B, on which audit opinion has been expressed. And that's it, we have completed essay 710 also.